The clock read 11:43 p.m. when Darnell Hayes' truck died on Route 66. Every system failed at once. Radio, lights, engine, everything. He was stranded in total darkness on the edge of the Malpais lava fields. Then he saw the lights, blue-gray and pulsing, moving toward him across the jagged rocks. Not human, not anything he could explain. Then everything went white. When he woke up, slumped over his steering wheel, the clock read 2:43 a.m. Something had taken 3 hours of his life, and he could only remember fragments. Welcome to Lady E's Dark Tales. I'm Mr. Gray, and this is a story from one of those places, the forgotten roads where reality just falls away. It's one of those tales that's been floating around truck stops and weird internet forums for a while. It's about a driver named Darnell Hayes, who by all accounts was totally normal. A guy who had his feet firmly planted on the ground. He was not some tinfoil hat-wearing weirdo. At 47, with 16 years of line-hauling goods all over the country, he was a professional. His entire life was diesel, asphalt, and hitting deadlines, not hunting for little green men. But on the night of October 31st, 2020, he was hauling a load of auto parts westbound on a historic piece of Route 66 near Grants, New Mexico. The cab of his Peterbilt was his whole world. He had a picture of his kids on the visor and classic R&B playing on the stereo. He was a guy who'd seen it all, tired but comfortable in the solitude of the road. He grew up laughing at old Twilight Zone episodes, thinking all that UFO stuff was ridiculous, never imagining he was about to become the main character in his own personal horror show. Outside, the landscape was pure nightmare fuel. He was driving along the Malpais National Monument, which is Spanish for the Badlands, but it should be Spanish for, yeah, you're gonna die here. It's this massive, ugly field of old volcanic rock. Under a sliver of moonlight, it looked like a black, frozen ocean of jagged razors. It's the kind of beautiful that makes you check that your doors are locked. The road was dead. The silence was absolute. The clock on his dash read 11:43 p.m., so everything was fine. The first thing to just completely shit the bed was the music. Al Green's voice just dissolved into a burst of weaponized static, like a hornet's nest being fed through a distortion pedal. Darnell, annoyed, tapped the radio. It was dead. He tried AM, the weather band. Nothing. Just that same angry buzzing hiss. Pissed off, he reached for his CB radio to see if anyone else was having problems. The whole unit was dark, not a single light. That's when he felt it. His head began to ache, and he could hear a low-frequency hum that seemed to vibrate his teeth right out of his skull. The whole truck shuddered. The engine sputtered, and his dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree of pure panic. Low oil, engine overheat, transmission failure, all at once. It was impossible. The truck was in perfect condition. Before he could process the sheer chaos, his headlights flickered and died. The engine coughed one last time, and then silence. A thick, heavy silence that was so profound, it felt like a physical weight. His 80,000-pound rig, his kingdom, was now just a giant metal coffin coasting to a dead stop in the suffocating blackness of the New Mexico desert. He was completely stranded, plunged into a darkness so total he couldn't even see the front of his own truck. Darnell's training kicked in. He tried the ignition. Dead. He grabbed his heavy maglite, ready to climb out and figure out what the hell was going on, when he saw it far off the road, maybe a quarter-mile out in that jagged lava field, was a light. A faint, pulsing blue-gray light just hovering over the rocks. As he stared, it split into 2, then 3. They weren't rescue lights. They were moving with this smooth, oily grace that was just fundamentally wrong. And they were coming for him. The pressure in his head got worse, a migraine from hell. And with it came this invasive psychic push. It wasn't a voice, just a powerful, undeniable command to open the door and get out of the truck. His hands started moving for the latch, like a puppet on a string. A little trickle of blood started dripping from his nose, thick and warm. Through the windshield, the shapes became clearer. Not human. They were freakishly tall and thin, their limbs moving like they were underwater as they glided over the treacherous rocks. Their bodies glowed with that same sickly blue-gray light, with patterns swirling across their skin like deep-sea abominations. There were 5 of them now, silently surrounding his rig. The air in the cab dropped, a damp, morgue-like cold that made his skin feel clammy and tight. Darnell was no longer a trucker. He was cornered prey. One of the things stopped right outside his driver's side door. Darnell could see it now, and it was the stuff of absolute terror. Its head was a smooth, featureless egg that tilted with a twitchy, bird-like curiosity. The light patterns on its skin swirled, and the pressure behind his eyes became a crushing, agonizing weight. He was paralyzed. He couldn't move, couldn't turn his head, couldn't even scream. This was it. The being outside the window seemed to shimmer, its form turning semi-transparent. Then it just sort of melted through the fucking metal of the door. There was no sound, just a greasy ripple in the air and the smell of ozone and hot, rotten meat. It was inside the cab with him, a towering, glowing silhouette standing where his passenger seat was. The cold was unbearable, like freezer burn on his soul. The mental assault intensified, a psychic parasite trying to slurp his brain out through his tear ducts. He felt a pop, and warm blood started weeping from the corners of his eyes. Darnell tried to fight. God, how he tried. He focused everything on that thumb, on moving anything, on staying conscious, on not letting them take him completely. But the being's long, skeletal fingers touched his forehead, and the world went white. Not bright white, empty white. A void where thought and sensation just ceased to exist. When he came to, he was slumped over the steering wheel. The cab was freezing cold, his breath fogging in the air despite it being October in New Mexico. The windshield was completely fogged over from the inside. His face felt wet. He touched it, and his fingers came away sticky with blood from his nose and the corners of his eyes. And the clock on the dashboard read 2:43 a.m. They were gone. The lights in the lava field were gone. The oppressive silence was replaced by the normal sounds of the desert wind rattling against his truck. He turned the key in the ignition. It started on the first try, turned over like nothing had ever been wrong with it. But he had no memory of the last 3 hours, just a black hole where time used to be. Except for the flashes, images that felt more like fragments of a nightmare than actual memories. Metal, cold metal against his bare skin, bright lights, impossibly bright, that weren't light at all but something else, something that burned without heat. Pain, sharp, probing, clinical pain in places he couldn't name. Something examining him, studying him, taking samples, instruments he couldn't understand, doing things to his body he couldn't comprehend. And those eyes, those enormous black, emotionless eyes, watching him like he was an insect pinned to a board, nothing more than a specimen to be catalogued and discarded. He didn't escape. They finished whatever the hell they'd come to do, and then they just put him back, left him there in his truck like discarded trash, his mind wiped but not quite clean enough to erase the fragments. Shaking, disoriented, barely able to process what was happening, Darnell stared at that clock. 2:43 a.m. His brain tried to make sense of it. It was 11:43 p.m. when his truck died. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely operate the touchscreen to pull up the log on his electronic logging device, the government-mandated tracker in his truck. And there it was, printed in clean, undeniable data, a perfect 3-hour gap. According to the satellite-tracked log, his truck was parked from exactly 11:43 p.m. to 2:43 a.m. 3 hours, just gone, erased. It was the official computer-verified receipt for his nightmare. And here's where the story gets even more dogshit for Darnell. The fragments he could remember, the flashes of cold metal and probing instruments and those terrible studying eyes, were replaced by the slow-burning horror of no one believing him. When he called his dispatcher, his voice still trembling, barely able to form coherent sentences, he was met with a tired sigh and told to get the wiring checked in Flagstaff and maybe lay off the coffee. He tried to tell his ex-wife, who just gave him that gentle, "Honey, you need a therapist, look." His daughters started to look at him with fear in their eyes, like he was becoming someone they didn't recognize. His trucker friends, guys he'd known for years, guys who'd shared 1,000 cups of bad coffee with him, began to avoid him at rest stops. His story became a joke, whispered behind his back. Hear about Darnell. Thinks he met some glow-in-the-dark freaks. Thinks they abducted him. Poor bastards finally lost it. The man whose entire career was built on reliability, on always being on time, on being the steady guy you could count on. He was now considered a lunatic. The incident didn't just steal 3 hours from his life. It completely nuked his credibility, his friendships, his reputation, his entire sense of self. He became an island, haunted by a truth that everyone else called a delusion. That isolation drove him to do the one thing he had left. He recorded his account and threw it into the internet like a message in a bottle, desperate for someone to believe him. So the trail of Darnell Hayes' story just goes cold after that. What do you think happened on that stretch of Route 66? Did some interdimensional bastards really pull this guy over and abduct him for 3 hours, probing and studying him like a lab rat before wiping his memory and putting him back? Or did he have a psychotic break, complete with missing time and physical evidence he can't explain? We have the word of a once credible man and the unnerving details of his fragmented memories. But in the end, we're still left with that one annoying piece of evidence, that 3-hour gap in the electronic log. A perfect, clean, computer-verified hole in reality that nobody can explain away. It's just an unsettling reminder that there are some long, dark roads out there where the rules of the universe seem to just check out, and you might end up losing a little more than just your way. You might lose time itself, and you might never get it back. Well, that's where Darnell Hayes' story ends. Tell me, what would you do if you woke up and 3 hours were just gone? Have you ever experienced missing time or seen something on a lonely highway you couldn't explain? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories about unexplained encounters on America's forgotten roads intrigue you, hit that subscribe button. And remember, some highways are lonely for a reason, and the darkness between mile markers doesn't always give back what it takes.